But where are you really from?
A podcast about the Asian American struggle.
Hi, I'm Jesse Lynn.
And I'm Angela Lynn, and welcome back to another episode of But Where Are You Really From?
This week, we have another special guest as part of our featured series, Asians Doing Cool Shit. We're joined by Major David. Please help me with your last name, David.
H is silent in this case, so it's Phetmixay.
Phetmixay, welcome. And if you guys didn't notice, I introduced him as Major, so he's part of the United States Air Force. So David, as part of our series introduction question, would you like to tell us, but where are you really from?
Hey guys, first of all, thanks for having me. And I will offer that my dad's from Laos and my mom's from Thailand, but I was born in California, raised in North Carolina.
Huh, a lot of
Nice.
different places.
Yeah.
Where in California?
I was born in Sacramento,
Okay.
and then my dad actually took a Greyhound across America and then found North Carolina to be the best spot for some reason.
Interesting.
Very interesting. North Carolina was just like, I don't know, let's try North Carolina. Or did you have like family or friends or anything there?
No, I think my dad had a sponsor, but there's a lot of Lao folks that moved from Laos to America and other parts of the world. And I think that North Carolina just reminded him of like, I don't know, maybe a simple lifestyle back in Laos. So I didn't really grow up within Asian community. I grew up around other white folks and other Hispanics. Like in my lifetime, I've met a lot of other Asian Americans that have grown up in Asian communities, and then I just not happen to be one of them. So we have kind of like a different mindset. You can have a different mindset in that case. Dealing with identity and who, like you asked, like your podcast, like, but where are you really from? I get that a lot. Or, sometimes you get, are you Chinese or Japanese? And then you have to
Right.
explain where are you from and your parents are from, and put forth the effort, which I think is always worth the effort, even if it is a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, sense of identity definitely factors in there. And I just had to learn just a different way of life. My parents, they don't speak the best English or perfect English, but it's good enough. That the first thing they did when they came over from Laos is learned English. They enlisted in ESL classes, and so that's the reason why I can speak English well. But I didn't learn too much Lao or Thai at home, so I just started learning whenever I got into the Air Force, really.
That's really interesting. One of our best friends, her husband, like his family chose not to teach him how to speak Mandarin growing up because they were afraid that he would learn English with an accent. And now it's like one of his regrets is not knowing how to speak his language. So it sounds like you know how to speak your language now, but like, what do you know if your parents actively chose not to do that for that reason, or?
Yeah, my dad and my mom specifically said that in order to succeed in the US, then we're going to have to learn English, and that's going to be the primary language. They did try to teach me one time. I do remember whenever I was a kid, they put the Lao alphabet in front of me, and they put a fly swatter next to it because that was the weapon of choice. And they're like, "You're going to learn this."
Oh, no.
This sounds very familiar.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so they didn't have time to like actually follow through with it because it had to work. So I skipped that part. But I do, so I got into a language program in the Air Force. It's called the Language Enabled Airmen's Program in 2012. And whenever I got in, I didn't know how to read or write. And so now to this day, I put forth a lot of effort and time, and they have given me a lot of classes. And I've actually been to Laos on duty for a few times, working the embassy, working the POW MIA mission.
Wow.
For those that don't know, that's a prisoner of war missing in action. Going out there and then helping translate between villagers and Lao people and Americans while we're out there trying to recover remains from the war. And so I've been pretty lucky in my career so far, in which, they let me go to this program, they teach me how to read and write, and they give me opportunities to use it. And so at the same time, I get to connect with my own family because I can speak, read, and communicate with them better.
Damn, I'm like jealous of you because I mean, Jesse and I both grew up with households where we did speak Chinese at least some of the time or all of the time. And then we went to Chinese school like once a week, every week for our entire, like until high school graduation, essentially. But I would argue our like speaking and certainly our writing and reading skills
It's
are
definitely still grade school.
pretty
Yeah.
whack. Yeah, pretty bad. And so for to hear you having grown up without learning it at the time of your life where it's like the easiest to learn the language and then learning it as an adult and being like totally fluent enough to be translating and like having these really tough conversations is really like admirable. Claps for you and
Yes.
also like jealousy from me.
I appreciate that. It did take a lot of work. Actually, I'm learning Thai right now in preparation for my assignment to Bangkok. So they're very similar. Lao and Thai are very similar, but Thai has more consonants and vowels. So there's more to mix and match in there.
Hey everyone, we love doing this podcast, and if you enjoy our episodes, we would really appreciate if you could support us in any number of ways. First is by subscribing to us, rating us, and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Second is by telling a friend. Third is following us on Instagram at whereareyoufrompod. Fourth is by buying our merch on our website. And fifth is supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee. You can find out more about all of these by visiting our Instagram's link in bio. And again, our handle is at whereareyoufrompod. Thank you.
You said that now when you go home with your parents, you do speak Lao to each other, even though growing up, you spoke English to each other. Was that a weird transition? Because for me, I'm in this like weird boat where my mom's English is not very good. So she knows more than she lets on, but she just like pretends like she doesn't know. So then she forces us to speak Mandarin with her. So I'm used to like, okay, if mom's talking to me, I'm speaking in Mandarin. But my dad was a businessman. So he had a lot of business with America and other Western countries. So whenever he'd come home, he would speak English to me. So I'm like, okay, if it's dad, I'm speaking English with him. But my mind has like a problem with trying to mix the two. So like if I try to speak Chinese to my dad, I feel really weird. So like was it weird switching at a random point in your like adult life with how you were communicating with your parents?
Yeah, very, very much so. Well, in my situation, my parents always spoke loud to me and I would respond in English because we focused on English. But then the first time I actually spoke to my mom in Lao, because they did not see my progression. So they don't know, they didn't see it. So I'm speaking loud to her all of a sudden because I spent a month in Laos before and I'm like, I'm comfortable now. And she just laughs. And I was like, it's not, I'm trying to be, back to the roots here. Yeah. But it did take like a hot minute for her to be like, okay. My dad was more of like, okay, it's not bad. You. And so I have gained enough confidence in it where I actually spoke some Lao at my promotion ceremony.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
Really, the promotion ceremony, it was for my mom and dad because, they're the immigrants that came over and tried to make a better life for their children. And so I could just pin on the rank and be like, okay, cool, I'm a major now. This doesn't really affect me that much because it's just part of the progression. But for my parents to showcase to them like, hey, we're doing well over here. You might not see me every day, but things are still going good.
When you were going through that program to like learn the language, did you tell your parents?
Yeah, so I did because the Air Force gave me an opportunity to go visit Laos. I haven't been able to visit Thailand on part of the program, but I'm going to work there here, arriving this summer. But that gave me opportunities to see my family for the first time, like a lot of my family for the very first time in my life when I went over there in my 20s. So because my parents moved and immigrated to the States, I only grew up with immediate family. So having that sense of like aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpa, cousins wasn't really there for me, except trying to just survive and like trying to be successful in America.
What was it like when you went and saw your extended family for the first
Yes.
time?
It was pretty emotional. Like we had gone to Thailand whenever I was younger, maybe like 10, 11 years old. And then I finally came back as an adult. And my dad is the oldest in his family, and I'm the oldest in the
A
family.
lot of
So
pressure.
there's that hierarchy, right? Yeah. Because my dad has not been back for like over 30 years.
Wow.
And so my family in Laos is not, flown to America because it's so hard to get a visa to go over there. So they haven't seen each other in a while. And so whenever they see me, they see my dad, and they're always
Oh,
asking what's up, and I'm trying to represent the family over there. And it's just full of love, even though we haven't seen each other. Some folks, like some of my family members I've never seen before, just nothing but love from them as soon as I arrive, and they know that I'm coming. And
oh.
I really, there are moments that, I'm not really accustomed to, not the loving part, but just like being around family and
Yeah.
just hanging out.
Oh, I got all the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah. I really feel that. I mean, Angela, I've talked about it before, but like I definitely feel the same way when I'm visiting my larger family in Taiwan. I feel like it's so nice to be part of like this larger unit of people that like know each other and hang out, and like they're family in name and actually family in practice. Like they're friends and they're there for each other. And every time I go back, I'm always like, damn, like I'm missing out on like 2 years of everyone's lives every time I come back. It's every 2 years, and it's like something completely different. People have babies or they're married or whatever. So yeah, you feel that.
Okay, well, changing gears a little bit. Being in the military, like you said, you're one of the only Asian people, minority probably broadly, but what was that like when you told your parents, like, hey, I think I want to join the forces as my career? And was that something foreign to them? Did they like get what that really meant? And like, did they feel like that was a good track for you? Or how was the reaction to that initial discussion?
My dad was super supportive because he had some experience back in his day. And so, especially going to the Air Force Academy, out of anything, he was all about it. And if anything, it really like helped me understand and gave me more opportunities, I guess, because when you go to the Air Force Academy, the government spends so much money on us. Like they just make you go through a ton of training. And the more in life in general, the more experiences you have, the more you can learn, because one, you are able to make mistakes. As whenever I was growing up, like I wasn't allowed to make that mistakes, just trying to be a model minority, I guess you can say. And then when you're afraid, you can't be bold, and when you can't be bold, you don't learn. And so going to the academy helped me change my mindset from being super cautious to being more bold in how I conduct myself. And so that helped me learn a lot. And so the result of that is a, successful career. And then my parents being like, oh yeah, so you get to graduate, have a guaranteed job. You've been getting paid, and since you went into the academy. And now I've been in Asia since 2012 and going back to the motherland. So it's kind of a incredible route when you think about it, because not a lot of people will have my kind of career path. And so I hopefully, they come over and visit, if COVID allows it, and that we can like reunite and with everyone. My parents actually came out and visited me when I was stationed in Korea. So I showed them Seoul and
Wow,
Busan.
nice.
And then they came out here in 2018, summer 2018, like one of the hottest summers that Japan had. And I was having them like walk around everywhere. Like for me, I'm a young dude, so I'm just like, yeah, you can do it. I think you're just complaining too much. And then you find out that it was actually really hot. And it was very interesting for them because they're parents, right? So I'm like I'm taking care of them.
Yeah.
Because I have, I'm financially responsible. Like I know where to go. I know how to do things. And there was like, you could see it was like weird for them to have for them not to be taking care of me, and I'm just taking care of them. And I was glad that they gave me the opportunity. I'm glad they even came over to show to them like, hey, I'm not doing too bad over here, and I want to show like that I can not only take care of myself, but you guys.
So We kind of just talked about how your career felt like to your parents or what they thought about it. Where did you first get the idea of joining the forces? Like, was there a moment where you were like, this is for me, or you were just kind of curious and you joined up and realized as you were going through the training that it was like, this is right for you?
Yeah, we actually had to move a lot whenever I was growing up in North Carolina. I went to like 4 different first grades,
Oh,
and we're trying to find a stable job, and just there's so much chaos when you're like going through all that. So then, what I think happened was that I craved order, and going into the military in that culture is that there's always going to be order in the middle of chaos. I went through a lot of training in my high school years, and I liked it, so decided to go with it.
Nice.
how did you choose that branch specifically?
Specifically because my dad said army life is a lot of suffering, and he didn't want me to suffer. So then he said, you should go Air Force. And that's the one thing I said, okay, sure, I agree with you on this.
Okay.
Is there like a organization of which arm of the armed forces suffers the most?
Yeah, I generally speaking, there are understood or implied levels of the amount of suck that you have to go through.
Okay.
And so I think like Marines and Army guys have to endure the most. And
Okay.
then Air Force, because our mission is engaging from a distance. So we have more time to react rather than immediately.
And ignorant personal question, do you know how to fly anything?
No,
Okay.
well, they did teach us, like we were flying engineless aircraft and stuff, but I didn't go through pilot training, but a lot of my friends are.
I mean, you're stationed in Asia, but the forces that you are with are not all Asian. So, what
Mhm.
was it like going through initial training and like the academy, and then now, full time, being one of the few Asian people? And did that come up really at all, or is it just like, we're not trying to talk about race, we're not trying to like make a thing, you're all
Um,
the same, or what was that like?
yeah, whenever I went through the academy, actually was the first time I wasn't asked if I was Chinese or Japanese. So that was nice to start off with because people are a little bit more educated to have to get into that institution. But in my career, before I think last year was with George Floyd
Hmm.
and everyone. Um, we didn't really talk about diversity that much. We have diversity training because we're in the military, we're a government entity, so we acknowledged it, but I don't think people really understood. You know how to ask the right questions of like, okay, you grew up in this part of the country, or maybe your skin color that you have, probably you have some type of trauma growing up, whether you grew up in an Asian community or not, you have some form of discrimination that you have experienced. And that is one thing that I don't think people of non-color actually think about, which is okay because that's something that they have other things to think about. But to engage people of diverse backgrounds, I think that would be helpful for them. I guess to now, since it's the most fresh in my mind, I actually had a non-commissioned officer that worked for me in my previous billet, and he said that in his 11-year career, I was the first Asian American officer that he worked for.
Hmm.
It's like this is 11 years, and he's of Tibetan descent, grew up in India,
Cool.
and then moved to Minnesota, and I'm the very first Asian American officer he's ever worked for. And I was like, that's wild. So that's, I guess, you can give you an indicator of how diverse it is in the Air Force.
Question I've been noodling during this time is
Uh-huh.
how you think of identity, or if it's been something that you've had to deal with while you're in the forces, in the fact that you're American, but you also, on the outside, you look Asian. And especially when
Mhm.
there's conflict with other Asian countries, has there ever
Mhm.
been a sort of like questioning of your Americanness or your patriotism just because you're Asian? Because I'm just thinking back on like obviously we're much more progressive time than in the past, but like during the Vietnam War and like other wars in the past where we've been fighting other Asian countries, but there are people of that descent who are Americans fighting on the US side. There was, hatred and like misguided discrimination against the American, Asian people that are fighting for America. So I'm just curious if that's ever been something that's come up in your time that you've been in the forces, or if, luckily things have changed for the better and you haven't had to deal with that.
Yeah, I think people are more consciously aware, but I'm also in the officer corps, which is more strategic thinking. Our strategic competitor, according to the national security strategy, is China and Russia. And then so we have these discussions we have our own kind of group of Asian American officers in the Air Force, and we have these kind of discussions. Actually, one of them is a Chinese American officer. Most people are saying, no, it hasn't really affected them. Maybe it would affect them if they still keep in touch with relatives back in China or Taiwan or Singapore or wherever they have their family. But for the most part, as long as you're able to get the mission done, then I think you're okay. But then at the same time, people are more willing to engage you because you're in the military and you're an officer and say, I don't understand this. Can you help teach me?
Do you feel like your upbringing as an Asian American specifically helped you in any way in the armed forces? Like, was there something that you brought to the table that you didn't see in your classmates or colleagues?
For me, it's about the community. And I think that's what I bring to the table. It's all about how the team can accomplish and win together versus just one person. Because I think we do have that capitalistic mindset because we're a capitalistic country of like me all the time. But I have focused on the team that I'm with or that I'm leading and making sure that every one of us wins, because I think if every one of us wins, then we can part paths and continue that line of goodness and paying it forward, learning, and then teaching other people along the way.
Okay, so I think we are just about ready to move into our closing fortune cookie section. And for full transparency, the question we had prepared is not applicable anymore because we're going to ask you what the coolest thing is that you've ever flown, but obviously that is not applicable anymore based on what you said. So I think maybe a good alternative is like, what's the coolest mission or like your most proud mission or project that you've been a part of while you've been in the forces thus far? Sounds like you have a lot of cool things ahead, but thus far.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to be a part of a lot of cool missions. I will say that the coolest aircraft that I've flown in is an F-15. I had received an F-15 incentive ride when in Virginia when they were still stationed there at Langley, and roller coasters have not been the same since then. So we pulled 8.4 Gs. That was the maximum that we pulled. That was a crazy amount. It's a workout to fly in a fighter aircraft. You respect those guys and girls. Wow. And so the coolest mission that I've been a part of is probably when I was in Korea. So I led a team of 60 people. And when we were trying to get the mission done, everyone has their own individualistic characteristics. I went through a lot in that because I was leading young people, older people with families, from all kinds of different backgrounds. But at the end of the day, I try to use that as a strengthening piece to the team to say, this is what we need to do. We're all going to come together no matter what, because I experienced, I've been in teams where they've been fractured a little bit. But in this case, because I'm the boss, I set the tone. So we all agreed to work together. And we had a pretty tight-knit family because not only because of how we were, but because the situation was so dire, we didn't know what's going to happen every single day. That really helped grow the team. And I think I know a lot of them are going to be friends for the rest of their lives because of what we had to go through. I'm really proud of them because we earned a lot of awards. We didn't do it to earn awards or anything, but just to grow and help teach them and then leave from Korea and then spread their knowledge. They have a lot of credibility because of what we went through.
Well, thank you for joining us. And if we didn't already say it, thank you for your service because it's so, it's kind of like this. I don't have enough words to say to thank people that are in the forces, because has a lot of sacrifice, and like a lot of people aren't willing to sign up for. So I'm really thankful for you and everyone else in the forces, and thank you for joining us today before your first day as a major. Woo!
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback for us or for David, please feel free to reach out to us. And reminder that we're still looking for listener story submissions. So write us in about whatever experience with this topic you have, or whatever you want at telluswhereyou'refrom@gmail.com.
Come back next week for a fresh new episode. And until then,
再见, bitches.